mode.
Okay, good morning everyone. It's a couple minutes after 10 a.m. and we're going to go ahead and get started here with our special City of Evanston, Evanston Edge social media webinar. This is part two where we're going to focus a little bit more on Pinterest and Instagram. I'm really happy today because it's going to be an informal webinar, a little bit more conversational, but we have some really good guest speakers today that are doing cool things in their respective areas. I want to give everyone basically the format for the webinar is I'm going to introduce Elaine Kemna-Irish from the Evanston Chamber of Commerce. She's going to talk for a few minutes. Elaine is then going to hand it off to Charlize Agnew with the City of Evanston, who's going to talk about Instagram, who will then hand it off to Cindy Plant, who also of the City of Evanston, who will talk about Pinterest. And then we'll come back and talk with Jessica Vanderberg from Evanston Chamber of Commerce. Jessica, I think Elaine has referred to Jessica as her secret weapon at the Chamber. So she's going to talk about some of the social media that she does at the Chamber, and then also maybe a couple examples of other cool things that she's seen Evanston businesses doing with social media. And then I'll talk for a few minutes about internet trends, and time permitting, talk a little bit maybe about ads and specifically for Facebook. And then we'll open it up for some Q&A, which is kind of our favorite part, which is answering questions that you might have. If there's anything that we might have missed, or if we went too fast over something, it gives you an opportunity to submit questions. We are accepting questions throughout the webinar, so feel free through your control panel on the GoToWebinar to submit questions. And if we don't get to it during the webinar, we'll get to it during the Q&A section. We're also recording this session, so we understand if you're a small business owner and you wear many hats and you have to step away, we understand, and we're recording it so you can watch this. If you missed the second part, for example, you can watch this at a later point. And we'll share that information with you and for the folks that registered and may have missed today's webinar. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to introduce Elaine from the Chamber. Elaine has been a partner with us on these social media webinars, and we're happy to have both her and Jessica on the call today. So with that, I'll let Elaine take over.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am just going to be brief. I'm just going to mention a few things that I've noticed about social media. In the past, you had to meet face-to-face with your customers and clients, and, you know, small businesses especially just have a lot of hats, like Luke just said. And this is just another way for you to touch, you know, a touch point for your clients, where you can engage them for a few moments. You don't want to do it too much, but you want to at least engage them and mention some things, pose some questions. I think it's just another unique way that you can reach out to customers without leaving your space or your office or your store. So that's all I want to add today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Elaine.
Okay.
With that, I'm going to go ahead and transfer the presentation over to Charlize, and she'll talk a little bit about Instagram.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I'm Charlize, the Community Engagement Specialist here with the city. Can you see the screen okay, or do you see my GoToWebinar little thing at the top?
We can see it now.
Okay. Let's see.
So you are good.
Okay, perfect. So as we continue to shy away from text-heavy forms of communication, there are two social media platforms that have really taken the main stage for content sharing and engagement, and those being Instagram and Pinterest. So Instagram is a mobile app. It's an online photo sharing, video sharing, and social networking service that enables its users to take photos and videos, apply filters, and then share them to a variety of social networking services such as Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. It was launched in October of 2010 solely for Apple users. So it was only available for those with iPhones. And then in 2012, Instagram was introduced to the Android services, so the Galaxy phones. And then in 2013, so as of last year, it released its beta app for Windows phones. So with the gain of popularity came the changes of it, you know, kind of growing from just being an Apple app to now servicing pretty much all cell phone providers and OS operating systems. So also with that change, Instagram got bought out by Facebook, and they haven't manipulated the app in any way. The only difference that we're seeing now is that since they purchased Instagram, when you share your photos onto Twitter, instead of it showing the actual photo like it used to in the past, it simply just provides a link for them to go back to your Instagram profile. So anyone can view the image. They don't have to have the app. It's just one of the minor changes that occurred. So now we're going to talk about how to use Instagram. It's fairly simple. It's just like using a point-and-shoot camera. Here you'll see just kind of some screen grabs that I took while using the app the other day. After taking the photo, you're sent to the next screen where you're able to kind of manipulate the image. So here is where you kind of have your creative fun. You can pick, one of a dozen filters, whether it be black and white. You can add a contrast. You can rotate the image. You can also add, artistic effects, whether it be blurring out a certain part of the image and whatnot. So once you kind of make the image to where you want it to be or kind of what you want it to express, you are sent to the share page, and this is the most important page of Instagram. Here you're able to see that it's where you're able to add the description. Again, you want to keep this short, especially if you're providing it on social networks such as Twitter. That's just something to keep in mind. You want to grab their attention with, since they can't see the actual photo on Twitter, you want to grab their attention with your description. You're also able to tag people in the images, so if there are other Instagram users, you can tag them directly. Also, you'll see something here that says add to photo map. This works very similar to kind of a Foursquare. It's your way of checking in to a place on Instagram. It's also very important, especially for your business. So let's say someone walks into your location, takes a photo of a menu item or something that they were served with from your organization. Once they tag the image with that location, anyone who searches on Instagram for your business will see that image. So they don't necessarily have to follow that user. They simply have to search for your name and that photo will come up. So it's a great tool for kind of free promotion in a sense where they do all the work and then really it's tied to your organization. And then at the very bottom you'll see that they give you a couple of options there to share via social media. So you can share it on Facebook, Tumblr, Flickr, Twitter, and then Foursquare, as mentioned before. It just ties again to that location. So Instagram is only an app on the mobile phone. Now they do have a version where you can view images on a web page, but they function very differently. The app allows you to actually upload the image, share the image as we just saw, and then manipulate the image as well. It also allows you to view, and right here you'll see it, the icon with a little heart in it. It allows you to view your notifications. So any new followers, any other photos you were tagged in, or any kind of mention. So if someone wants to start a conversation with you on Instagram, this is where you'll be able to see it first. This little icon right here is your search icon, and it basically allows for you to, as I mentioned before, you can search for your restaurant name, or they'll be able to see those images that your location was tagged in, or if you want to find a user or a certain hashtag, which we'll discuss later, that's also at the bottom for you to use. As far as the web page, it really is only good for two reasons. One is SEO. If anyone searches for your company, they'll be able to see this online kind of photo gallery. It's presented in a very visual way, which is great. And it also allows for visibility for others to kind of get an idea of who you are as a brand, your interests, kind of your products, and then browse through conversation. Through the web page, they're also able to share the images, which is nice. So let's say they don't have an Instagram app on their phone. If they go on the web page, they're able to share it to their Facebook or Twitter, so any other social media kind of platforms that they're involved in. So this is the City of Evanston's Instagram. We've existed for quite a bit, but we started to really kick things into gear this past January, and since then we were able to grow our followers quite significantly. I think it's pretty much over 150 new followers since that time, and it's all organic. So we haven't held any contests just yet. It's been pretty much just pure engagement with our followers, whether it be sharing their images, commenting on their images, or even liking them. But you'll see here, so we held our first social media webinar on May 1st. And so what I did was I put the followers as of yesterday in comparison to the first time we held a social media webinar. So you'll see that there's tons of growth with Instagram, and it's always evolving. So as of now, we have 336 followers. We are following 104. And then in terms of posts, we pretty much stick to an average of one a day. You don't really want to overwhelm them with images. You want to have the image make an impact. So one a day is kind of the rule of thumb. If 2 a day is fine, but I really wouldn't go overboard and, say you do 5. That's just a bit too much. So yeah, as opposed to you have 130 or 63, excuse me. So there's kind of 3 different ways that we do Instagram promotion as of right now. One being the promotion of city businesses. So here you're seeing an image of Who's Your Mama. So I actually remember taking this or sharing this photo. We didn't take it. It was actually taken by the user To Inspired Design, which you see tagged there. She took the photo a couple of weeks back, and so it was just a very gloomy day, and it was just a nice opportunity to kind of continue to push Evanston businesses and get our followers to see everything that's going on within the business and within the city itself. So you'll see it got quite, really good engagement. There was about 21 likes. We had a ton of comments of them just expressing what their favorite menu item was. Some of the commenters hadn't been there before, so it was awesome to kind of see them expressing interest and wanting to know where this location was so that they can soon, one day visit. A couple of important things here is you'll see that the very last comment, you'll see that someone tagged her friend in her comment for the post. So when she did that, it helped with added engagement and reach. So she actually tagged someone who probably hadn't seen the photo just yet, but then joined the conversation once her friend had tagged her in it. Another important thing that I wanted to kind of point out is you'll see that we did tag the location. So again, you'll be able to see, if you search for Who's Your Mama, you'll be able to see this actual photo come up as a part of their photo gallery on that search. Another way that we promote using Instagram is kind of promoting post-event recaps. So for here, there was an ice skate event that the cultural arts director here had hosted, and we just wanted to, to show everyone the result of that. So here you'll see that they got some great comments. It was a nice little visual to kind of show exactly what the public art display was all about, and then it helps generate more conversation surrounding, what they were either there for or what they had missed, so that they know next time what to kind of expect. And then finally, Instagram is fun. So if we have followers and they're going through a highlighted moment in their life, we're there to share that for them. This one user actually got engaged in the Evanston lakefront, and so we happened to just share one of her images and then congratulate her on her engagement. So no pun intended there, but this is the best form of engaging with your followers, just showing that you do care and you are human in a sense, where you're able to kind of express in those joys and kind of congratulate them and be there with their journey. So how do you make Instagram work for you? These are just 4 very key and basic steps that I think would work for everyone. One of them is staying engaged. As mentioning before, we gained a lot of our followers just by liking, commenting, or sharing their photos. A lot of times the followers love when they have their photos shared. So that's just a great way to kind of say and remind them that you're looking at their photos too and that they matter. Find key menu items, products, or events to promote within your Instagram account. You don't want to do anything that's kind of random unless that's kind of your brand. You want to really just use the images as a selling point as why people should be at your business. Promote customers and followers. So again, as we had before, we promoted them by the use of sharing their photos, by tagging them, asking them questions. And then an important note here is to ask customers to be the next photo that you take and then tag their Instagram handle. This does a lot of things. It helps kind of build trust within your brand, but then it also kind of reaches a broader audience because as their friends begin to see that they were tagged in your photo, you're now kind of gaining more eyes to your account. And then also, the last one is just to have fun and host contests. So your customers are already taking photos, so why not reward them? the best kind of way to do that with Instagram is either having a photo contest or a, not a survey, what is that called? When you do like a poll? A poll, yeah. Or you could do a poll, and then the first person to answer correctly will get like a nice little trinket or, you know, what have you, whatever you decide it may be. So currently the City of Evanston is launching its first Instagram contest, which begins next Monday, and it's the Evanston Beach Instagram contest. So it's just a really fun way to kind of celebrate summer and have people who are already going to be at the beaches, already taking photos, kind of reap the benefit of taking photos while they're at the lakefront. So for this specific event, we're doing it for about 4 weeks, well, 3.5 weeks, so through the 25th, and we have just a couple of contest rules that I think should apply. And something that you should think about when running a contest would be to make sure that the follower or the participant is following you on Instagram, that they're tagging the location of the photo, and then that they're using the hashtag that you accompany with the contest. So this being Evanston Beach for this particular case. And then the grand prize winner we're leaving up to the community vote, which will be in the coming weeks following the contest. So those are just a couple of ideas for Instagram. I don't think there are any questions as of now, but we are definitely here toward the end of the webinar if you have any more questions. But my colleague Cindy Plant's going to go ahead and take on over and talk about Pinterest.
And actually, Cindy, right before you go, do you mind if I ask a couple questions of Charlize?
Oh, sure.
Sorry to jump in. So Charlize, that was a great presentation, by the way. Thank you. So as far as tagging people, how does that work with, the one thing I know about social media is that I don't know everything, and I do use Instagram. I do use Instagram a little bit, but you're much more knowledgeable about Instagram than I am. How does that work as far as tagging people? Can you tag people that you don't even necessarily follow, they follow you? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can. The easiest way to do that is what I do. If you're following someone and then you go to tag them, it'll automatically populate. So it makes it easy to, you know, not make a typo in their username or etc. But you can certainly tag anyone, even if they have a private profile, which means that you have to send a request to view their images. They can still be tagged in your images.
Okay,
and
great.
See the photo just fine. Yeah, so you can communicate across the board whether they're following you or not.
Okay, great. And then I know that I think Jessica's actually going to touch on Hootsuite a little bit, and Hootsuite is something that we use here at the city basically to share content on multiple platforms. But I know a lot of people who actually use kind of Instagram in that same fashion as far as, you know, they love Instagram and they want to share this piece of content on Instagram, but then they'll go ahead, like you had mentioned one of your first slides, of then you can also share on Facebook, share on Twitter, and so forth. Sometimes I think users aren't crazy about specifically if they're a Facebook user, and there's people who have their Twitter account tied directly to Facebook and they're constantly getting tweets in their Facebook news feed. And I think sometimes that may or may not work, but it seems like Instagram, the integration is better and smoother, and I don't think it is. I think it's a better experience when you're sharing it on multiple platforms. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you on that. And as I mentioned before, so Instagram used to work very well with Twitter before it got purchased by Facebook. So, and there's always a time and place to kind of share something. So I completely agree with the sentiment that, you know, your tweets are kind of going a mile a minute where Facebook is more slower of a pace. So It may not be the best kind of way to go about that. But for Instagram, you're not really posting every 3 minutes. As I mentioned before, the key practice is probably 1 or 2 posts a day. So it's really ideal for Facebook. It's seamless. Once you go ahead and post it to Facebook, it embeds within your timeline. So same with videos, which all of your followers or friends on Facebook will be able to see quite smoothly. It'll appear on their timeline, and it's just great for visualization. So one thing I will say, Instagram is great for Twitter because most of the time your Instagram username is someone's Twitter handle.
Right.
You won't see someone have 2 different usernames in that sense. So it's an added point of contact as well, as I had mentioned before, because now not only are you reaching them on Instagram, but you're reaching them directly on Twitter. It doesn't work that way with Facebook because it just wasn't built like that, and that may be something we see in the future now that Facebook has kind of taken the reins on the program. But Those are just some thoughts on how to use with social media.
I like your philosophy too and I think it mirrors what we're seeing now. Like if you study Fortune 1000 brands on Facebook, for example, and I'm sure that this would be very similar on Instagram now, we're seeing that the best practice is really like maybe 1 to 2 posts a day instead of like this constant barrage of stuff on Facebook and clogging up people's news feeds. I think I agree with you though. I think saving kind of like the best quality and then maybe doing 1 or 2 a day is much better than bombarding people with stuff, whether it's Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
There was I think you and I have talked about this too. There was a Forrester report that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and basically their recommendation for larger brands at least was if you're not on Instagram, you really should consider getting on Instagram because the engagement levels are so high. And I know that like that one post, the Who's Your Mama post, I mean, even though we only have a few hundred followers or whatever, but there was like I think over 20 different likes and multiple comments and so forth. So, and that's a really high percentage if you factor in number of followers versus engagement. So I think we're seeing those really high percentages like some other brands on Instagram are seeing as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great. The followers basically tell us what they like and what they don't like, and that's a great learning tool as we continue to grow our Instagram account. Because then we start to kind of see the ebb and flow. We're still, kind of tinkering with the best times to post because those are all factors as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's just great. It provides great insight, and it's really one of the best engagement tools that social media has yet.
And I also agree, the last thing I wanted to mention is I really liked your approach, though, of kind of like your first and foremost doing listening and engaging rather than, marketers and advertisers have a tendency to just constantly bombard people and blast people with, here's our sale and here's this and here's that. And I think the first approach or the first step is maybe doing more listening, more engaging, more commenting, more sharing, and then secondly trying to, do more promotion stuff too.
Mm-hmm. And the app makes it easy to do that. So it's kind of a nice hand-in-hand approach to really kind of being successful in your Instagram.
The growth with Instagram is just unbelievable considering it's only been on the Android platform for like 2 years, which is just incredible, the growth that it's seen. So, and the nice thing too is even though Facebook has purchased Instagram, they haven't ruined it yet, and the mm-hmm. challenges or the drawbacks that we might see with Facebook and the organic reach issues, that has not come over to Instagram, at least not yet, and hopefully it won't for some time. So it's another reason to perhaps consider Instagram as a platform.
Yeah, and there's no ads yet on Instagram either.
Right, right, no ads. So it hasn't been ruined by ads yet. So sorry to interrupt, but at this point, I'll go ahead and let Cindy talk about Pinterest.
Hey there. My name is Cindy Plant. I'm an ICMA Local Government Management Fellow here at the City of Evanston. And one of my responsibilities in the last few months has been working on some of our social media profiles, particularly for economic development, and then also managing the city's Pinterest presence, which has been around but really only recently has sort of taken off since I adopted it and started sort of growing it and using it to share not only some of our content, but content from local businesses and other organizations in and around Evanston and things that are relevant to what the city is doing. So Pinterest is a really important and exciting place, I think, for businesses of any size to be because of the traffic and the demographics of users on Pinterest compared to other social media platforms. Pinterest is actually number 2 in the amount of referral traffic after Facebook, like on the whole internet. And moreover, Pinterest drives more traffic to content providers to these original sites than Twitter, LinkedIn, and Reddit combined. Those are the next 3 largest social networks in terms of traffic being generated. Pinterest is generating more traffic than all 3 of them put together. Also more than YouTube, more than Instagram. So that's really key and important to be mindful of as a business in terms of engaging with your customers and promoting your brand. They do offer paid pins, but it's a fairly recent development. So there's not really ads on the site yet. Certainly not to the extent that you would see on Facebook or Twitter. And accordingly, there's less of a paid organic reach problem that you'd see with Facebook because the algorithm just doesn't isn't taking that into account yet because it's so new, although you can pay for pins and have sponsored pins and things like that. Demographically, 80% of Pinterest users are women. They tend to be moderate to high income, and they tend to be located primarily in the Midwest. 50% of those users have children, and those users are spending way more time on Pinterest when they do log on than almost any other site. One statistic I read was that users spend, on average, 80 minutes on Pinterest per visit, which is huge. I don't know that I spend that much time anywhere. 80 minutes is over an hour, almost an hour and a half, that people are just browsing Pinterest, looking at pretty pictures and going down rabbit holes of links, looking at recipes and wedding planning and pretty dresses and travel ideas. Because you can browse Pinterest just by categories. I've listed some of the top ones here. Top categories include wedding planning, food, shopping and fashion, travel and vacations. DIY projects are really good. Home and garden products and ideas. And all of those are things that people pin. It's very image-driven. This is just a random example from the Pinterest homepage before even logging in of like some of the popular pins that particular day. So we've got some vacation pins, some closet organizing, it looks like, and then just random graphics and illustrations. We'll move on to what each pin looks like when you pin something. You have your board will be all of your pins going to one place. This is a pin that I did for, we made an Evanston Shop Local Pinterest board, and I pinned this image from Stumble and Relish, which is like a jewelry and accessory shop on Chicago Avenue that opened up, I think, December of last year. They had posted this image to Facebook previously, but as far as I can tell from their website, I couldn't find them on Pinterest. But that's okay, because anyone can pin anything from any website as long as there's an image. You just put in the URL of the website where the image is, and Pinterest will automatically pull all the pictures and ask you which one you want to pin. So you've got that eye-catching image, and then you can put in a little description, which I did down here. It's beautiful jewelry at Stumble and Relish in Evanston. When you're pinning from a website, it automatically embeds this link. So if I were to pull up this pin and click on the picture, it would take me to Stumble and Relish's website. You can add maps. That's a function that was added in the fall of last year by Pinterest in response to its popularity for tourism and travel planning. And local businesses and chambers of commerce around the country are now using it too to promote local businesses because you can now tie each pin to a map. You don't have to, but it's a neat feature to consider if you're a tourism agency or a chamber of commerce, because it can sort of show you a local focus. Those maps source from Foursquare. So if you haven't claimed your business on Foursquare, it's probably a good idea to do so in order to create that synergy and connect it with your Pinterest profile and your Pinterest pins. Because even if you don't have an official space for your brand on Pinterest, there's a really good chance that people are still pinning your content anyway. Like I said, Stumble and Relish didn't have a Facebook or didn't have a Pinterest page that I was able to find. However, I was able to pin this image directly to their website, so it links back to them. And then over here in the corner, it shows you other things that people have pinned from that same website. So people are pinning your content anyway, but it's a good idea to embrace it and get more of it out there and drive more of that traffic back to your site. Fun fact about this one, I actually bought one of these necklaces because I thought this was so pretty. So it works. Even if you're not doing it, people probably are. So ideas and best practices. Pinterest itself actually provides some really helpful info and resources for business users because they really are trying to encourage that adoption. Because it tends to be so much of a niche social network, most users are women with families. Not a lot of people outside of that demographic, I think, are aware of it. They don't give it as much credit as maybe they should. But those people have a lot of spending and buying power. So it's a good place for any kind of marketers or businesses to be, especially for retailers, food-oriented business, hospitality, and doing well on Pinterest really relies on images. Images are the currency of this medium. That includes photos, as well as things like illustrations. Maps, diagrams, and infographics tend to do really well. And the other thing to consider is that you might want to add a Pinterest button to your website or blog. This helps you with analytics. Pinterest, like most other business platforms, when you sign up as a business, will provide you with analytics. Not just for your Pinterest page, but if you have it linked to your homepage, your website, it will show you what people are pinning from your website, even if you don't pin it. So for the City of Evanston, before we were even on Pinterest, we had already analytics showing us that people were pinning things from our website before we even got on Pinterest. So that was really interesting, and those analytics can be really helpful in determining what kind of pins do well and what's driving traffic to your website. You can always add things from any website just by plugging in a URL, but you also have the option to just upload a picture by itself. I don't recommend that because that doesn't give you that link. If you're pinning from a website, it gives you the link, and it's already in there, and what you want to do with this is drive traffic back to your website. If you're just uploading pictures, it doesn't do that nearly as well. So the City of Evanston Pinterest board, we created a Shop Local board for economic development. We did integrate this map functionality that they've just added. So we categorized it as like a destination and shopping board because you can pick categories, and that's how people browse the site. When they're spending those 80 minutes on Pinterest, they're just clicking on their favorite categories, which could be destinations, could be shopping, could be weddings. So picking those categories for your boards is really important. This particular board was a shopping and a destination board. We also have a sort of tourism board that's an Explore Evanston board. It's got another map like this, but it covers things like parks, the Rose Garden, interesting features on the Northwestern campus, the lighthouse, all of those sort of, not as much commercial things, but things that points of interest that people might want to visit. We also made a public works board where we post construction updates and maps and information about capital improvement projects that are going on in the city. Our other popular boards, we made one for the animal shelter. We're posting adoptable pets there. We have one for the arts, an events one, and then the sustainability one's a lot of fun. We post a couple of DIY projects. There was one I think I did last week about rain barrels that we had sourced from, I think, another city's Pinterest board. So there's all sorts of engagement that goes on between pinning and repinning things. It's important if you're repinning things to attribute credit if it's not obvious, because it's just good karma and best practice. But that's sort of what we're doing with our Pinterest board. I included the Shop Local one because it seemed like the most relevant for the business community. But we've got others as well that are relevant that you might want to check out. Other local Pinterest boards of interest, North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau is a really good one to follow because they'll retweet and repin plenty of your content if it's relevant to any of their boards. And they've got plenty. I think it was something like a dozen boards in different topics. Enjoy Illinois is the statewide tourism. They're doing their campaign with the little traveling Lincoln, where they take pictures of the little Lincoln doll sitting in front of different points of interest around the state. And then Make It Better magazine also has another like sort of North Shore focused Pinterest presence where they post things from different businesses from around the North Shore. So those are good ones to follow. They'll probably follow you back. They've followed us. So they're good connections to make to sort of forge those relationships and that engagement and drive more traffic back to you. So that's it for me.
Cindy, that was great. Thank you so much. It was really helpful. I learned a couple of things about Pinterest that I didn't know before. And I'm really glad that you touched on the fact that it's such a huge referrer now. Basically, other than Facebook, Pinterest is the referrer. And I liked how I was not aware of that statistic about the 80 minutes of browsing that the average Pinterest user is doing, which is just huge. I mean, I would wager if that could be double any other platform right now. So, and I also the demographic that you mentioned, the middle to upper income female demographic, that also coincides heavily with huge buying power. Especially if you look at it from a household buying standpoint. I forget what the statistics are, but it's something like 70% or more of the household buying power is controlled by basically that same demographic that you're pointing out here at Pinterest.
Yeah, it's moms. It's women with kids. The other interesting thing that I don't remember if I made a note of before, but the best times to post and when that traffic really peaks is actually in the evenings, from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. It's after the kids have gone to bed.
Right.
Mom's getting on Pinterest, and she's, doing shopping and looking at pretty DIY ideas for the house and, planning a fantasy wedding for somebody. So that's, important to know, and it really matches up well with what you think of for that demographic. That 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. window, weeknights, and then also during the day on Saturdays is another peak time for Pinterest. So that's another neat thing to be aware of.
What are you finding with, I was going to call it an old platform. It's kind of silly to call Pinterest an old platform, but it's a little bit older than some of the other, like the really latest and greatest, like Snapchat and so forth, which are basically mobile-only type apps. Pinterest did kind of see exponential growth when desktops and laptops were still relatively popular. So it was kind of originally built for a kind of a desktop experience. What are you finding as far as now there's a huge shift to mobility, smartphones and so forth? Is it still working as well on mobile devices too? Absolutely,
and especially with tablets, things like iPads, Android tablets, it works on phone too. There is a Pinterest app that's available for definitely iPhone and Android. I think it's also on Windows Phone and maybe BlackBerry. I could be wrong about that, but definitely the two main OSs have a Pinterest app. The site displays pretty well in the app, in the browser. It's mobile friendly, and it's definitely sort of adapted really well both to a desktop model as well as mobile.
Okay, great. And it's funny because I used to think that Pinterest was going to be kind of a fad and that it would kind of fizzle out after a year or whatever, and I was really, really wrong on that one. So, and then what about, not to put you on the spot because I know we haven't probably experimented with it yet on Pinterest, but can you talk a little bit more about paid pins and how that might apply to small businesses or why they might want to consider that as an option?
And it is such a new thing that we haven't really done much with it. I think it just rolled out either end of last year or beginning of this year. But if you have like a cool new product that will probably drive traffic to your site effectively, that might be something that you want to do a paid pin for. If you've got an event or a sale coming up, that might be worth including. I don't know at this time what their pricing is like, but I would imagine it would be comparable to something like a Twitter or Facebook, where it would be like a pay-per-click kind of thing. But don't quote me because I haven't done much with it. I know that it exists, but we haven't quite gotten there yet for the city's Pinterest. But it's something to be aware of.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. That was really informative. So now I think we're going to switch over to Jessica at the Chamber and let Jessica talk about some of the things that she does at the Chamber and maybe a couple examples of other local Evanston businesses doing some cool things with social media.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Kind of to piggyback off what Shirley said with the contest, the Chamber, and I've noticed some other organizations have had a lot of luck with doing contests. For example, on Facebook, I do a Throwback Thursday contest where I try and, put up a little trivia question about, some Evanston history, and we get a lot of good interaction from other people. I give out a prize for the first person who comments with the correct answer, and it also allows people to use hashtags as well. you can kind of follow. I know Found, when their chef Nicole was up for that Best New Chef Award, their hashtag Girl Chefs Rock got quite a bit of following. And I know someone mentioned the Chicago North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau. During their restaurant month, they also ran a little Instagram contest where they, they said take a picture of your food and the best photo will win a prize. And they got a lot of great interaction with that. So posing questions in contests are a great way that I found for people to interact. And then I also wanted to touch on Hootsuite, which the Chamber has an account. It's free, or there is a free account, but it only will allow you to post on a certain amount of platforms. So if you want to do, I think the next step up is like $10 a month. And I think that's really great because, like, for example, I'm going out of town next week, so I'm going to be out of the office. So before I leave, I can schedule all my posts so I don't have to do it when I'm off. So you can put any kind of pictures up there in any kind of platform, from LinkedIn to Facebook to Pinterest to Instagram. So that is really great, especially for busy people. You don't have time during the day to step away from your store at the peak times to make a post. You can schedule it. So I think that's really great. Another great organization that has a great social media presence I found is JJ's List. They have on their website a disability-aware directory where businesses can participate in that directory and be listed. And each week they feature a business to love, and they always post that on Facebook and Twitter. So there are some great organizations doing great things around town, and yeah, it's really great. So.
Jessica, I'm glad. Jessica, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned JJ's List because they were on social media kind of in the early days. So I think that's a really good example of someone locally that's doing a good job on social media. Mm-hmm. And I liked your mention of Hootsuite scheduling. I think that's really important for small business owners who, again, are wearing so many different hats and they're so busy and they're trying to do 17 different things at once, and the ability to, it could be 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and you could schedule all of your posts for the upcoming week if you wanted to do it that way.
Yeah, and if you have too many platforms for the free account, I think the free account maybe only allows you a few platforms. So if you wanted to do kind of like all of those core platforms, like those 4 or 5 core ones, it's super affordable. It's like, I think we pay like $10 a month or something like that to be able to post on all those platforms.
Yeah, exactly. We use Hootsuite here at the city as well. We're a long-time user. I've actually personally used Hootsuite going all the way back to like 2009 or whatever, which is and primarily, and at least initially, it was the scheduling thing that I really liked. And then you're correct insofar. Yeah, there's the free plan, which I always recommend people start with the free plan. You can always migrate to the next plan up, which is like $9 or $10 a month, which to me is money really well spent.
Yeah, yes, that's very affordable. And something I kind of noted, I don't know if it's true or if it's just a myth. I have read in some places, like especially for Facebook posts, that when you post through some third-party sites like Hootsuite, that you kind of have to be careful because it kind of maybe might reduce your visibility a little bit. So, I don't know how much truth is into that, but I have read in several places that, so I've been manually posting my Facebook posts. But again, for Twitter and Instagram and, other platforms like LinkedIn, I think Hootsuite is really great.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the Facebook. On the Facebook issue in Hootsuite, we also we used to send everything out through Hootsuite, and then we changed. And generally now we submit our posts directly natively in Facebook because we are concerned about the organic reach issue and the visibility issue. But also, I just feel like it looks a little bit better when it comes natively out of Facebook than when you post from Hootsuite.
Exactly.
Now, clearly, if we're in an urgent situation, we're trying to get information out quickly, we probably will just go ahead and send it out through Hootsuite. But I'm glad you mentioned that. One more question for you is you work with businesses every day, every week. What are you seeing as some of the biggest digital challenges for small businesses in Evanston?
Some of the biggest challenges, I think, is, well, obviously time. It's really hard for small, again, and I think this is where Hootsuite really comes to save the day. It's really hard for people to step away from their store, their cash register, whatever, to actually, make a post. And now there's so many different platforms that, how do you decide which post is best for which platform? Like, for example, I think Twitter is more like in the moment type of a thing, and, a Facebook post, is more, it lasts a little bit longer, the reach. And, yeah, and I think coming up with content, too. I know there's so much out there. I share a lot of people's posts. So even if you can't, think of something to say, I always just find an interesting or great deal to share. That way you still have a presence.
Right. Well, that's great. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. I can't help but think that, Evanston's gotten a lot of acclaim, especially on the dining front, from Time Out Chicago or whoever it might be. And I like to think that hopefully the Chamber in downtown Evanston and the City of Evanston, we've helped play a small role, at least on the digital front, in being able to share content from our partners in the business community and help them expand their audience and expand their reach. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Another thing I really quickly wanted to add, and I know somebody touched on it earlier, I think it was Cindy, the number of posts you post a day I think is very important too, because you don't want to, be away for a whole while, the weekend of course, but you don't want to be gone for a whole week and then come back and post, 5 posts a day. So, I mean, be consistent about it and not too spammy. So that was the last thing I'd like to add.
All right. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing your experiences. So I was going to talk just for a few minutes about, for those of you that don't know Mary Meeker, she's an internet and web prognosticator, and I think she comes out with this report twice a year on internet trends, and it's one of the premier sources of trying to identify future web trends. And I'm always trying to look a little bit ahead on the trends and see what's popular, what's perhaps a fad, and what's here to stay. So I would encourage you to check out her full slide deck basically at this address here. It's basically 164 slides, and I went through it and kind of tried to select the best slides or the most interesting information, at least for this audience, that I thought would be most appropriate. So just I was going to go through some of the highlights that I found from the presentation. One of which is the growth of tablets, which is no surprise, and I think we talked about this with Pinterest and how well Pinterest is adapted to tablets. You'll see in the green basically is the growth of desktops, which was good growth but not exponential growth, and then now, especially as of about 2009, I think the iPhone came out in 2007. So shortly after the introduction of that, we saw desktops start to drop off. Laptops actually started to pick up about that same time, but then in the yellow here, we're seeing just explosive growth from tablets. What's interesting about the tablet growth, though, from what I've read from other reports, is that it's mostly in the Generation X and Boomer categories, not so much in the Millennials. The Millennials are, in many cases, smartphone only, or tablets are kind of secondary to them, whereas tablets are really popular among Generation X and Generation Y, which also corresponds to that same Pinterest demographic that we were talking about. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Wanted to point out this too, because we talked about a little bit about advertising in the first social media webinar. This is kind of a fascinating look of basically the time that people are spending in different media forms and then the corresponding percentage of advertising. So for example, if you look at print on the left-hand side there, print is now down to roughly 5% of people's time in media. which is obviously a very dramatic shift in, let's say, 10, 20, 30 years ago. So that's undergone a major shift. But you'll notice that the ad spend is actually not caught up to that yet. Now, it is showing a decline on the ad spend in print, but you'll see it's roughly 4 to 5 times the time that people are spending. So I think that there is still a lag in the industry of people shifting their ad spend from print to other forms. You'll see radio is about right. You got 12% time spent, 10% ad spend. That's pretty close. TV is roughly about right. You'll notice though that time spent on TV is declining, and we're seeing more and more people cutting the cord and getting off of Comcast or AT&T or whoever, and then maybe they're going with Netflix or Hulu or other means, or just basically focusing mostly on the web. So you're seeing a decline on time spent on TV. The ad spend is holding steady at 45%. But then look over to Internet and mobile, and especially mobile ads, where both Internet and mobile are growing rapidly. And even though the ad spend is growing too, there's a huge opportunity there, I think, both from a cost perspective and an audience perspective. So I would definitely encourage you, if you are spending some amount of money, even if it's a small amount of money on print and other media forms, to consider more Internet and mobile ads for sure. I really liked this graph. This was pretty interesting to me. Kind of in the early days of Facebook, I think I've been on Facebook personally for maybe 6+ years. Kind of like the big thing, and this is true of Twitter as well, there was always this huge rush of who can get the most friends on Facebook, or who can get the most fans, or who can get the most followers on Twitter or whatever. And now we're kind of seeing this interesting shift from, well, as Mary calls it here, broadcasting fewer messages to larger audiences, shifting to frequent interactions with smaller groups of close contacts. And I think we're seeing that whether it's WhatsApp or Snapchat or SMS texting or WeChat or messaging through Instagram or other means. I think we're definitely seeing a shift, and it kind of goes back to, I think, what Charlie's was touching on with Instagram is the value of engagement. So even if you only have, maybe you only have 200 fans on Facebook, and you wish you had 2,000, I would rather have 200 fans that are highly motivated and love your brand and are sharing your content on a regular basis and engaging and liking and commenting and sharing than 2,000 fans that you may have purchased, or you were fortunate enough to ramp up to 2,000 fans, but they're not really engaged or they're not passionate about your brand. So I think that that's a big thing. I think sometimes, especially small businesses, they get kind of depressed, like, oh, I only have 100 followers on Twitter. Well, if you have 100 followers on Twitter and they really love you and your product or your service, and they're helping you share your message, I think that there's tremendous value, and not to get too caught up in the number of fans or followers. This is another look at basically the growth of, in particular, I wanted to highlight mobile phones, the second line there, which is about to overtake TV. So there's going to be, probably in the next 12 months, there will be more mobile phones in the world than TVs, which is pretty remarkable. And then you can also see smartphones approaching 2 billion, laptops and desktops, obviously very strong. But then again, there's the tablets, coming on strong there. Still relatively small in comparison to some of the other devices, but there's still huge growth there from a tablet perspective. Here's another look at kind of the last, I guess it's 3+ years here, kind of this shift from desktop to mobile to really multi-platform. And you'll see Tumblr and Pinterest and Instagram kind of on the left-hand side, and then you'll see like this huge spike as you cross into, from end of 2012 into the beginning of 2013, where we kind of make this shift to, mobile first and multi-platform. You'll see Instagram just with a huge spike there. But even Pinterest, even though it was kind of more of desktop initially, I think they were able to successfully pivot and offer a compelling platform on mobile and multi-platforms. So you were able to see their growth continue. Tumblr has still done pretty well, though it's kind of plateaued a little bit. And then Vine and Snapchat, which are essentially mobile-only or mobile-first apps, just exploding in what, not even quite 2 years. So just tremendous growth there. And then this is kind of an interesting shift too, and I've kind of changed my philosophy a little bit on this as far as even from a city perspective. We have some departments that have explored creating or working with a vendor to create their own apps for their own departments. And we do have a City of Evanston app that you can download in the iPhone and Android stores. And initially I was thinking, well, no, there should only be one City of Evanston app, and it should do multi-purpose and try and be all things to all people. And I've kind of changed my philosophy a little bit on that. And we're seeing this dramatic shift from, initially you had first this multi-purpose web app, which is the old Facebook web app model. Then Facebook created a decent iPhone app, right, that was multi-purpose, but it was a mobile app. And now you're seeing this single-purpose, there's an app for that kind of philosophy. And even Facebook, too, is seeing the writing on the wall on this, and now they're breaking off like their Messenger app. So they're breaking that off, and they've already broken that off into a separate app, and I believe they're actually going to change it so that now you can only do Facebook messaging through the Messenger app and not through the multi-purpose app. So we're really seeing a major shift to the single-purpose app thing. And even Instagram, for example, it doesn't have dozens and dozens of bells and whistles. It does basically one thing and does it really well. And same thing with WhatsApp and these other ones that are just really hot apps right now. So I think on this next screen here, Dark Sky is an app that I use, and it's a really popular weather app. And basically, it just does one thing. It's a mobile app. It locates where you are and tells you if it's going to rain in the next 3 hours or not. And it's not like the Weather Channel app, which sometimes if you've used it, it's kind of overwhelming. I mean, it's cool, and it's got radar, and it's got forecasting stuff, and you could probably launch nuclear weapons with it. But the reality is sometimes people just want to know, is it going to rain during my softball game in the next couple hours? And so we're seeing kind of these targeted approaches to apps. So if your small business is not using an app, you might want to consider there's lots of app builders out there that are available. You can contract with a vendor to help build you an app, and maybe your app doesn't have to do 10 different things. Maybe it's just maybe you're a chiropractor in town, and you just want to give people the ability to make appointments, because chiropractor patients tend to have lots of appointments and need to come on a frequent basis. And being open only from 9 to 5, people need probably 24/7 access to be able to make appointments, and maybe an appointment app is something to consider. Foursquare is another one that basically is doing this unbundling, as they call it, where they've taken their traditional platform. Now I think they've split off into 2 or 3 different targeted apps, Swarm being one of them. So, and Runkeeper is another example there too. We touched on this a little bit already about the social media traffic referrer leaders. Facebook is still the big dog at 21%, but then look at Pinterest at 7%, which is amazing for a platform that's only a few years old. And then Twitter goes all the way down to 1%. So back to Cindy's point about Pinterest basically being a strong number 2 and basically being bigger than all the others, 3, 4, 5, and 6 combined. So again, especially if you have, I think the next slide we're going to talk about the commerce angle. I'll save my thought for commerce, but this is also interesting too about social distribution, that the average article reaches half total social referrals in just 6 hours on Twitter, 9 hours on Facebook. But this goes kind of back to the commerce thing, and the same-day local too. We're seeing this really popular now. Even small businesses are getting into this. It's not just the Walmarts and the Targets and the other big brands and big box stores that are getting it, like Amazon is another example that's getting into the same-day delivery. But now we're seeing companies like We Deliver, which is a startup based in Chicago, and I think they are, if they have not already, I think they have already expanded to Evanston, where small businesses are contracting with companies like We Deliver to basically outsource your delivery, and oftentimes it's same-day delivery, maybe just a few hours. So if you have a product that people might have a sense of urgency about, there might be something to consider. The same-day local delivery thing is really huge, and it's really heating up. So it might be something for some of the small business owners on this call to consider. Photos, this is obviously just a huge shift here. 2013 and 2014 in particular. I mean, look at this. We're about to hit 2 billion photos per day shared on social media, and part of this is platforms like Snapchat and Instagram and so forth being mobile first and mobile friendly, and so just amazing growth here on the photo front. this is what I wanted to mention about the commerce thing. So this is, as Mary calls it, kind of the trifecta here: content, community, and commerce. And even though we're a government agency, this is kind of close to what we try and do here as well. So we try to provide good content that's interesting and valuable to our residents and our citizens. We try to, as much as we can, foster some sort of community on our different platforms. And then commerce, whether it's a pet license or a vehicle registration or a business license or a temporary health permit thing that you might need to get, we've been really focusing on making that as seamless as possible, so you don't have to come to the Civic Center. We like seeing you in person, but you don't have to always come to the Civic Center and stand in a line at the collector's office. Virtually all of our processes now are on our website, and you can complete your form and check out in a matter of a couple minutes. And we've tried to make that commerce piece of it as seamless as possible. I think that's really important for small businesses in Evanston too. If you don't have this ability, you want to try and offer this ability, feel free to message me offline, but basically we use Wufoo and Stripe to manage the form and the back-end payment processing, and it's worked really well for us, and we're happy with that process. But I'd be happy to talk with anyone offline if they have more questions about how to enable their site for commerce. I think the days of having people mail you a check or come to your office only during business hours, and we don't take credit cards or only cash or whatever the situation is. I think you have to be more. All of us have to be more flexible on that front. So with that, I think we've covered most of the high points of today's webinar. I think we do have a few questions that we'll get to. Here's our contact information for all of us with our email addresses. You can also find us, of course, on social media, but feel free to message any of us at these email addresses. So with that, let me shift to, I know we have at least a couple questions that I want to get to here. So the first question is a question about Instagram, so maybe Charlize wants to weigh in on this one. How do you create a corporate Instagram account like you've done with Evanston? I have a personal account on my mobile phone. Do you need a corporate mobile phone in order to create additional accounts, or can you make multiple accounts on one phone?
That's actually a really great question. You can make multiple accounts. So what it doesn't allow you to do is toggle between accounts, meaning if you're logged into one, it won't recognize that you are the owner and main poster for another Instagram account, but I think that's for the best. Sometimes physically logging out of one account, especially if it's personal, to log into your professional account, is probably the best way to go to avoid from accidentally posting anything that may not be suitable for the organization. So that's one way to do it. Also, it's fairly easy to create an Instagram account, especially if it's professional, especially if you have a Facebook or other social media platforms already created. Really, in order to create an Instagram account, all you need is a thumbnail image, which will probably be your logo, or if you're the face of the brand, it would be a picture of yourself, and then a description as well as a URL where you can point people to your website for additional information if their interest is piqued by the photos that you've posted onto your Instagram account. And again, I touched on it before. In terms of the photos that you post, you want to make sure that they align with your business or your brand. So let's say, like, Who's Your Mama? You would expect to see some of their menu items, their lattes, their pies. You wouldn't really go there and expect to see something as, a car or something like that. So you just want to be sure that you're in line with the identity of your brand. And that can also go as far as even the filters you use. So I know there's some fashion companies that use Instagram, and they'll always use the same filter for every photo, or including a border or not border, and that's just kind of how they differentiate themselves from their competition, and also adds another level to their identity, in the slightest form in the application. But it is something to think about when kind of promoting your brand and kind of creating that space.
All good points. Thank you. And I wanted to encourage people, if they have other questions or comments, we've got about 5 minutes left on our webinar, so feel free to submit a question. Thank you, Charlize, for that answer. Also, Jennifer here on the webinar mentioned that she's actually had the opposite experience, where she says her scheduled Facebook posts tend to have lower interaction than Hootsuite. So that's really interesting, and that has been kind of, as Jessica referred to it, sometimes it's kind of considered maybe a myth, but that's kind of interesting. It sounds like Jennifer in this case has had actually better success with engagement submitting through Hootsuite than actually natively in Facebook, which is interesting. I'd be curious to see if, taking the same post and sharing it on both platforms and seeing, at the same time, maybe on different days, to see how that pans out. We have another question here from someone. Chris is asking, according to the Wall Street Journal, some 25% of online revenue is wasted on fraud. How can you manage this better to ensure you're getting what you pay for? That's a really important question, a good question. I have seen some articles in the last few weeks that there's some concern about either online ads or Facebook also offers you the ability to essentially purchase fans. And so you can run campaigns and you can say, target people in a certain area and we're going to spend this much per day. And we have experimented with that a little bit, and for the most part with pretty good success. We sometimes it's just literally $5 or $10 that we'll spend and just kind of experiment with. And from what I found, we typically have paid like 15 to 20 cents per fan or per like, which is pretty good in my opinion. But I know other people are concerned that sometimes there is kind of a fraud angle there, insofar as then all of a sudden they're noticing that they're getting fans from Australia, and there's really not much of an audience in Australia for their company, so they're concerned that that there is potential fraud there. I haven't really seen that. There is within Facebook Insights, you can go in and you can see where your fans are from, and obviously in our case we have a tremendous number of fans in Evanston, Chicago, and then in like the next tier of like Skokie, Wilmette, Evanston, so forth, or Skokie and Wilmette, for example. So I haven't really personally witnessed that. But it is a little bit tricky insofar as when you boost posts in Facebook, which I'm generally a fan of. Sometimes our posts may only reach 200 or 300 people organically, but then we'll spend $5 and all of a sudden we'll go from 300 to 1,300 people just by spending that $5. So in general, I do favor that. And when I do run those posts, in addition to getting that additional paid reach, I'm also seeing cases where we're typically picking up some fans along the way too. But it is a little bit more difficult insofar as when you hover over and you see that maybe that particular post reached 800 additional paid followers or paid reach, you don't necessarily know exactly where those folks are. So I do like the fact that you're getting more analytics than you might get from, let's say, a print ad. But the fraud issue is, it's an important question. So any other questions from anyone on the webinar, or is there any other presenters that had any other ideas, comments, questions, or suggestions for our audience?
Well, I had a comment. I just wanted to say that as being part of the Chamber for like 8 years and seeing this trend toward all these other avenues and platforms that businesses can use, I think this is very exciting. So for us, we're going to be doing a lot more visual things for our Fountain Square Art Festival that's coming up June 28th and 29th that I don't think we were able to do in past years. So I think there's so much opportunity for people to use these, and I hope that everybody kind of watches our stuff and sees what we're going to be doing. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that's a really interesting point. That in some ways, so are you saying that with the new social media platforms, in some ways, it's almost perhaps maybe made you reconsider or adjust the programming that you might offer, even in-person, in real life programming, because that is then better shared on social media platforms?
Well, for instance, the Fountain Square Art Festival has always been a visual experience, but you kind of have to go to it, and we want people to go. But like this year, we're thinking about having a selfie station, and we're going to have something unique for people to take a photo of, and we're going to have a hashtag, and we have people share it. And, I mean, we're known for our events, but what's happening now is sometimes people are sharing the event after it's over. Like, we have an Evanston Women in Business group that go online and share with each other and talk without even leaving their place of business. And it just seems like there's so many more avenues for small businesses to get their name out there. just like Cindy was saying with Stumble and Relish. I mean, that's just one little photo, and look what she's been able to accomplish with that.
Right. Right. That's a great point. And I think it is kind of interesting, too. So if you did miss that in-person event, you can sort of relive it a little bit online now by other people sharing the content and the pictures and the images and so forth. So, 10 years ago, if you missed the event, you really missed the event. But now at least you can sort of still follow it or enjoy at least portions of it online.
Yes. Like not talking about it the next day at work, like were you at the party last night?
Right.
Now they actually talk about it.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that we have. I want to thank all of our presenters. They all did an awesome job today, so I really appreciate that. I'm very lucky to work with talented people here at the city and then also our partners at the Chamber. So thanks all to all the presenters for joining us. And then also, again, feel free to reach out to the Chamber or to the city if there's anything that sparked your interest here in this webinar and you want more information from us. We're happy to be here. So with that, it's about 11:15. We're right at our time stop, and want to wish everyone a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good one.